Understanding the power of ego. Ego. It's a small word, but its impact is huge. If someone asked me what the strongest force in this world is, my answer wouldn't be money, luck, or intelligence. It would be ego. Because ego can make a person do things they never imagined they could do. It can push someone to escape poverty, cut off fake friends, prove doubters wrong, build an impressive body, or completely transform their personality. Ego is powerful, dangerous, and misunderstood. Most people think ego is always bad, something you should kill, crush, or remove from your life. But that's not true. Ego isn't your enemy by default. It's raw energy, and like fire, it can either cook your food or burn your house down. The difference is how you use it. To use ego properly, you first need to understand what ego really is. At its core, ego is self-respect. It's the voice inside you that reacts when someone ignores your value, disrespects your efforts, mocks your love, or underestimates your potential. Ego appears when a close friend breaks your trust, when family members doubt you, or when the world treats you like you don't matter. That's why ego often feels negative. It usually wakes up during painful moments. But here's something important. Negative energy is often more powerful than positive energy. A person under extreme pressure can survive impossible situations, but in comfort, even small pain feels unbearable. Ego works the same way. It carries strength inside it, intense strength. The real question is, if ego has so much power, why do we let it destroy us instead of using it to build ourselves? The answer is simple. Most people never learn the difference between the negative ego and the positive ego. Negative ego wants to prove. Positive ego wants to improve. Negative ego says, I must win. Positive ego says, I must grow. When ego is uncontrolled, it blinds you. You stop listening. Advice feels like an insult. Suggestions feel like attacks. You start believing everyone is against you. Even sending a simple message or saying sorry feels like losing your pride. And slowly, without realizing it, ego steals relationships, opportunities, and growth from your life. But ego isn't always like that. There is another side of ego, the side that fuels success, discipline, and transformation, the side that whispers, you are more than this. And that's where real power begins. Now that you understand what ego really is, the next question is dangerous but necessary. How exactly does ego ruin lives without people even noticing?
How ego quietly destroys your life. Ego doesn't destroy your life loudly. It doesn't come with warnings or alarms. It destroys you quietly. Most people think their biggest problems are lack of money, bad luck, or toxic people. But many times, the real damage is happening inside, through unchecked ego. Have you ever noticed what happens when your ego gets hurt? Suddenly, everything becomes about winning, not about peace, not about growth, just winning. You stop living for yourself and start living to prove something to the world. You don't ask, is this right? You ask, how do I look? That's when ego turns dangerous. Ego makes you believe you can never be wrong. The moment someone gives you advice, it feels like disrespect. A suggestion feels like someone trying to lower your status. Even people who genuinely care about you start feeling like enemies. And the worst part? You don't even realize it's happening. Ego also breaks relationships in the smallest ways. A simple message doesn't get sent. A small apology feels too heavy. You tell yourself, if I text first, I'll look weak. And just like that, one message unsent becomes a friendship lost. One apology avoided becomes a relationship destroyed. Ego convinces you that protecting your pride is more important than protecting your future. Another silent damage ego causes is blocking learning. When ego takes control, you start believing you already know everything. You stop listening, you stop improving, you stop growing. And life doesn't punish you immediately for that. It waits. Then, one day, you look around and realize everyone else moved forward while you stayed stuck. Ego also isolates you. It creates a world where only your voice matters. You stop connecting deeply with people. You stop trusting. Slowly, you end up alone, not because people left, but because ego pushed them away. Here's the most painful truth. With ego, you might win arguments, but lose years of your life. You might feel powerful in the moment, but weaker in the long run. Ego doesn't always crash your life in one big mistake. It does it through small daily choices. Choices to not listen, choices to not bend, choices to not learn. And by the time you realize what happened, the damage is already done. But this is not where the story ends, because the same ego that destroys people can also create monsters of success if used the right way. So if ego can ruin relationships, block growth, and isolate you, then why do some people rise to the top using the same ego?
The positive side of ego that builds you. Ego is not always the villain. In fact, some of the strongest, most disciplined, and most successful people in the world are powered by ego, just not the destructive kind. When used correctly, ego becomes fuel. Think about moments when the world tried to make you feel small, when people laughed at your dreams, when someone looked at you and thought, "This person can't do much." In those moments, something inside you probably reacted. A quiet but firm voice that said, "I'm not as small as they think." That voice is ego. Positive ego doesn't scream. It doesn't need to prove anything loudly. It simply refuses to accept a weak version of yourself. When everyone says, "You can't do this," positive ego replies, "Watch me." Not for claps, not for validation, but for self-respect. This kind of ego gives you stamina. It pushes you to show up even when motivation is gone. On days when you feel tired, lazy, or uninspired, ego reminds you who you're trying to become. It says, "You're better than quitting." That's powerful. Positive ego also gives you identity. It tells you that you are worthy of your dreams, that you deserve growth, that you are allowed to take space in this world. When someone tries to disrespect you or cross your boundaries, ego becomes your shield. It says, "I know my value." Without ego, many people settle. They stay in situations that drain them. They accept disrespect. They lower their standards just to feel accepted. Healthy ego stops that. It keeps your spine straight. Ego also creates healthy competition, not the toxic kind where you want others to lose, but the internal kind where you don't want to fall behind. You want to improve. You want to sharpen your skills. You want to grow stronger mentally and emotionally. That's why ego can become discipline. You don't train because you feel like it. You train because your ego refuses to be average. You don't learn because it's easy. You learn because your ego doesn't want to stay ignorant. But here's the catch. The same ego that pushes you forward can turn against you if it goes unchecked. The line between confidence and arrogance is thin, and crossing it is easier than you think. So the real skill is not killing ego, it's controlling it. If you can guide your ego instead of letting it guide you, it becomes one of your greatest strengths. And that brings us to the most important part of this entire topic. If ego can either destroy you or build you, then how do you control it instead of being controlled by it? How to control your ego instead of letting it control you. Controlling your ego doesn't mean becoming weak. It means becoming aware. Most people think ego control is about staying quiet, agreeing with everyone, or killing pride. That's wrong. Real ego control is understanding your reactions before they control your actions. The first step is acceptance. Accept that you have an ego. Everyone does.
The difference between strong people and broken people is not ego, it's awareness. When you deny your ego, it controls you silently. When you accept it, you can guide it. For example, imagine someone points out your mistake in public. Your instant reaction might be anger. Your mind says, "Who are they to correct me?" That's ego talking. But if you pause for a second and ask, "Are they right?" you just took control. That small pause is powerful. It separates emotional reaction from intelligent response. The second step is developing a learning mindset. Ego says, "I already know this." Growth says, "What else can I learn?" The moment you stop learning, ego starts quietly killing your progress. Every situation, even criticism, carries information. When you train yourself to look for lessons instead of insults, ego loses its grip on you. The third step is learning to accept feedback. People who tell you the truth are not your enemies, they are mirrors. Most people don't grow because they surround themselves with yes men who protect their feelings instead of their future. Stop running from honest feedback. Use it. You don't have to agree with everything, but you should listen. The fourth step is silence. Sometimes the strongest response is no response. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to win every argument. When you stop justifying and start acting, your results speak louder than your words. Silence confuses ego and strengthens you. The final step is direction, not destruction. Ego doesn't need to be crushed, it needs to be redirected. Fighting your ego will exhaust you. Guiding your ego will empower you. Let ego push you to improve, not to prove. Let it fuel discipline, not drama. Ask yourself this simple question regularly. Is my ego helping me grow or just helping me look right? That one question can save years of your life. Because ego will test you at every stage. When you succeed, when you fail, when you're praised, when you're insulted, when everything is falling apart, and when everything is going perfectly. So, now you know what ego is, how it destroys, how it builds, and how to control it. But the final and most important question remains. Is your ego taking you upward or slowly pulling you down?
Using ego as your comeback power. Ego will always be with you. There is no stage of life where ego disappears. It shows up when you fail, it shows up when you succeed, it shows up when you're ignored, and it shows up when you are praised. The only thing that changes is whether ego controls you or you control it. This is where everything comes together. Ego has two voices. The negative ego says, "No one should ever look down on me." The positive ego says, "I am willing to bend so I can rise higher." One makes you defensive. The other makes you dangerous, in a good way. When life breaks you, ego decides what happens next. Some people let ego turn into bitterness. They blame everyone. They close their minds. They repeat the same mistakes while protecting their pride. Others use ego as a reminder. I didn't come this far to stay this version of myself. That sentence alone has rebuilt lives. Positive ego is what helps you stand back up quietly. No announcements, no drama, just work. It's what makes you improve your skills while no one is watching. It's what makes you fix your weaknesses instead of hiding them. Real comeback energy is silent. Ego, when guided properly, gives you standards. You stop tolerating disrespect, not by fighting, but by upgrading your life. You stop chasing validation because your self-respect is enough. You stop explaining your worth because your growth proves it. This kind of ego doesn't need applause, it needs progress. But remember this, ego will always test you again. Just when you think you've mastered it, life will put you in a situation where reacting feels easier than reflecting. That's the test. Pause,
Ask yourself, am I reacting to protect my pride or responding to protect my future? Your answer decides your direction. The real power of ego is not domination over others, it's mastery over yourself. When you reach that point, you become calm, confident, and focused. You don't rush, you don't panic, you don't compete loudly, you just grow. And slowly people notice, not because you told them, but because your life speaks. So don't destroy your ego, train it, guide it, use it. Because ego, when controlled, doesn't make you weak, it makes you unstoppable. Now the question is in your hands. Will you let ego be the reason you stay stuck or the force that creates your strongest comeback? Your answer will decide your next chapter of your life. If you like the video, then like, share, and subscribe the channel. Do comment and stay tuned for more content.